We have committed nearly $100 million to improvements at the treatment facilities and also at the spray field.
We feel it's very important to understand how things work before people go about making decisions. The goal is to understand where this water goes, how fast it takes to get there, and then give that information to the decision makers so that they're armed with the best possible knowledge.
Our commission is very understanding of this, and they have said that if we're part of the problem down in those springs, we're going to be part of the solution. This is the area that the City of Tallahassee disposes of treated wastewater, the Southeast Sprayfield. In the farm there's overall 4,000 acres, but as you can see we're standing in a very nice wooded area. About 2,000 of that is left to the natural areas, wooded, sinkholes, and different streams. Only 2,000 acres within that 4,000 complex is actually used for irrigation, where we actually take the treated wastewater, irrigate it on crops, we then harvest those crops and remove them from the system, taking more nutrients out of the system. And that's very important because there is a concern that the nitrogen that we have here at the Southeast Sprayfield is contributing to Wakulla Springs south of the Sprayfield. And what we're doing is we actually have committed to a 3-year study with the United States Geological Survey to study that, to not only study groundwater quality here, but also velocities and flow patterns of that groundwater between the Southeast Farm and Wakulla Springs, St. Mark's, or any of the other springs down in the area.
The trail goes right to it. You've been there? Yeah. So yeah, you can go get set up, and then he's gonna draw back, and then we'll come back.
Today we start another step in the tracer study that's been ongoing for several weeks now. Preliminary results on the first phase have not come back yet. We don't know a lot of information, but we want to go ahead and continue this next step, which is actually introducing dye into one of the sinkholes located out at the spray field. What that will actually help us do, we know that there's some type of open conduit in that sinkhole formation, and we believe that we'll be able to detect that dye tracer at very good levels in some of the southern springs.
I'm just going to walk it through the creek. We're here at what we call Turf Pond Sinkhole, which is on the east side of the Tallahassee Sprayfield. And this is a sinking stream, meaning that the water from the pond is flowing through this creek into that small sinkhole and then disappearing into the Florida aquifer. All right, so it's 10:13, 10:15?
10:14.
Okay, here we go. What we've done is injected 60 gallons of eosine dye into this flow path. It's a completely non-harmful, EPA-approved dye. It's not going to harm anything that's living in either this stream, that sinkhole, or the aquifer. And in fact, you could drink it if you really wanted to. The goal is to use just enough dye so that it's detectable at our sampling locations. The closest spraying discharge that we think this might go to is about 7 miles away. So it's a long flow path. The farthest one that it could go to is over 12 miles away. So we had to use a considerable amount of tracer based on our previous work in the Woodville Karst Plain. All right. It's looking pretty good, huh?
Tracing has been done in limestone and carbonate rocks like this for well over 100 years, and it's been used extensively all over the United States. It's used in Canada, it's used in Europe very extensively. It's disodium fluorescein, and it was first used in 1875 in the Danube River at a town in Germany called Tuttlingen. But it's a very conservative dye, it's very fluorescent, and therefore it's very detectable.
Even though it's bright green and with the red tinge and stuff here in the sinkhole, at the springs, when we sample it, you won't be able to see it. We can see it with our analytical equipment, but you won't be able to see it with the naked eye. The goal is to see if one of those spraying discharges, we will be able to detect our dye as it passes through. And that'll give us an idea of both where the water goes and how long it takes to get there, or the velocity of the water underground.
Sinking streams are great injection locations because a sinking stream has to be directly connected to a conduit in the subsurface, and conduits lead to springs. So we expect to see those in springs because conduits connect sinking streams to springs.
Most scientists that we've talked to understand not much information is available about the groundwater south of the Sprayfield and how it all connects to Wakulla Springs. And that's evident because we're learning new things every day. The water utility, along with the United States Geological Survey, drilled 6 new wells south of the Sprayfield, and we're gathering more information about that.
We're hoping to trace the path of groundwater across the Sprayfield area and to the well south of the Sprayfield. We are using 3 Sprayfield wells here to inject the 3 aliquots of the tracer into. We pump using a peristaltic pump which operates on a vacuum principle. So we filled this pump hose up with water. We then crimped the hose and put the other end of the hose into the tracer bucket. So when we release the crimp on the hose, it automatically just siphons into the well.
What we would expect to see is what's called a breakthrough curve. So the concentration of the dye will rise slowly at the sampling location until it reaches a peak, and then it'll fall back down again and back to a background level of no dye present. And the goal is to measure that entire breakthrough curve.
The water utility, in conjunction, has a 5-year budget that looks at spending almost nearly $100 million on improvements to the treatment plant system and to the Sprayfield operations. It's very important to understand that, and we need to base those expenditures, those dollar amounts, on good sound science.
Good science means that you measure properly, you measure often enough. You know, there's a law of numbers. I think Lord Kelvin said that you can't believe science until you can express it in numbers. So things like 1 measurement and 2 measurements and 3 measurements are not going to have enough statistical probability to be reliable. So you need lots and lots of measurements.
The good part of what we're doing here today will give us additional information that is very important to, 1, find the connection between any spring south of here, and actually help us understand the contribution in the groundwater system. And all that information will probably be available this year. So very soon now we'll understand what is going on with the groundwater in this system, and if and how much the groundwater in this specific area is contributing to the springs south of the Sprayfield.
We feel it's very important to understand how things work before people go about making decisions, major decisions on how potentially to change the infrastructural design of the Sprayfield or something like that. Basically, the more you know, the better you're going to be able to respond. And so that's the goal, is to understand where this water goes, how fast it takes to get there, and then give that information to the decision makers so that they're armed with the best possible knowledge to hopefully, spend the city of Tallahassee's money the best possible way.
Several years ago, when the Water Management District Report came out, our commission understood the importance of understanding the science behind the Sprayfield, Wakulla Springs, St. Mark Springs. They committed $300,000 at that time, and they made a very bold statement. They want to know if there is a connection, and if the city is contributing nitrate to the area, they want to be part of the solution. And that's why we're doing this ongoing study, and that's why we're here today. We need to understand this, if there is a connection, the flow of groundwater, and also the water quality. And our city commission is behind us, and they want to know the answers.